I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the April 21st, 2026 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Councilor Bloom will offer the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Kirakutsum Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on. Tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed include the original past, present, and future indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Takelma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quakaka, where the crow lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. And Councilor Hanson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Jordan.
Sherrill.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Let me just double check. Duquesne. Duquesne is absent. Hanson.
Here.
Mayor Graham.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Under Mayor's announcements, I just want to make sure that anyone who has come this evening to speak with the council, make sure you fill out a speaker request form and you put it in the tray by our city recorder's desk here. When you fill out that form, please make sure that you indicate whether you are here this evening to speak to us on a specific agenda item, or if you're here to speak with us about something that is not on the agenda, that will go under public forum. If you could make sure that you identify which of those things you are here to speak for, we'll be able to get you up at the correct time. I also ask that you make sure that your speaker request form is in by the beginning of each agenda item. So if you're here to speak on a specific thing, please make sure that we have that at the very beginning of that agenda item. This evening we'll start with a proclamation in honor of farm workers. Whereas an estimated 72,000 farm workers are employed across Oregon and make essential contributions to our agricultural economy. And whereas an estimated 2.6 million farm workers are employed across our nation, driving a thriving agricultural industry that provides over $1.5 trillion in economic benefit annually. And whereas farm workers are the critical first step in the food supply system that feeds 341 million Americans and many millions more beyond our borders. And whereas farm workers are essential to the economic and cultural fabric of our communities, yet their contributions often go unseen. And whereas farm workers provide highly skilled and often challenging labor that is often taken for granted. And whereas the City of Ashland is proud to honor the legacy and continued perseverance of the farm workers movement and its ongoing fight against oppression and discrimination and for dignity, equality, and fair working conditions. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, Oregon, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby make this proclamation in support of farm workers in our community and across our nation, and call on the people of Ashland to take the time to learn about the farm workers movement and to find ways to support our local farm workers. In Ashland, we are better together. We are now to the approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of April 6th, April 7th, March 27th, and April 13th, 2026.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Great. So it is not listed on the agenda this evening, but under special presentations, we have my favorite evening of the year, and that is the award winners for the If I Were Mayor contest. So every year, the Oregon Mayors Association hosts the If I Were Mayor contest. And the way that works is that mayors across the state host local competitions, and then they select their winners. They select, if they have applicants, a winner for the elementary school space, the middle school space, and the high school space. here in Ashland, we have a lot of interest at the middle school level. And so for the last 2 years, I have also identified winners for the 6th grade, the 7th grade, and the 8th grade, as well as the overall middle school winner. And so tonight, they have come to see us and to accept their awards. And some of them will be taking me up on the offer of sitting in this chair and saying some things to our community, and giving this gavel a whack if they would like to. The reason it is one of my favorite evenings of the year is because it's so important that we include our young people in this grand experiment in self-government, where we help them understand how this works. How does the city work? What decisions get made here? Who makes them? How can local people be involved in those and influencing the decisions that affect their lives? What is happening in this room is critically important to this entire community, and it happens twice a month, well, actually 4 times if we include the study sessions, and in the conversations that happen around the community. And so I'm always so pleased to read the essays. Everybody should get to read all of these essays. And it's hard to pick winners, but we do that each year. And so what we are going to do this evening is I will call up each of the winners, and they will come up and they will receive their award, and then they are invited, if they would like, to sit down and say something into the mic. If they are not wanting to do that, that's fine. And then what we'll do, counselors, is we'll have them assemble over to the side after they've received their award, and then we will come out around the front here for photos. Parents, if you would like, you are welcome to come up through those gates and take a picture when they're receiving their award as well. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So the first award winner is for the 8th grade. It is, hold on just a moment. I have to finish getting organized here. Get our gifts out. Be ready. Thank you. Great. Okay, now we're ready. Our first award winner is for the 8th grade, and that is Zoe Nicholson from Willow Wind. The seat is all yours.
I just want to say I'm really thankful for this opportunity and to be a part of this community, and I had a really fun time writing this essay, and I'm really thankful for my teacher, Mr. C, who helped me write it, and I'm really thankful for my parents supporting me through it, and it was so much fun.
Our 7th grade award winner is Hallie Schweider from AMS. Sweetest? Okay. So, congratulations. For the 6th grade, we have Olivia Lanning from Willow Wind.
I had a lot of fun writing because I feel like I really care about Ashland and stuff in Ashland.
And our middle school overall winner is Cohen Nunes from Willow Wind.
I just wanted to say I'm really thankful for everybody who helped, who helped me write this essay. And I'm just really glad to be a part of this community. It gets better like every year. And yeah, thank you.
What's that? I'm not forgetting. They were going to have their hands full with the gavel. Yep. And we'll slide around this other side here.
Don't be shy.
That's right over here. And now the seat.
You got it.
Thank you. Okay, get myself put back together here. Okay, we are now to public forum. We have 4 people who have signed up to speak this evening, so everyone will have 3 minutes. The way that public forum works is that you'll come up to the microphone and the podium. There is a light display at the podium that indicates for you where you're at in your testimony. When you are down to 20 seconds, it will turn to yellow and give you a little ding. And when you are done, it will turn to red and give you a second ding. So remember, when you hear that first ding, you still have 20 seconds. At the point where your time is up, we ask you to please finish the sentence that you are on so that we can move on and hear from the next person. If you have mobility issues and you need the microphone brought to you, we are happy to do that. Simply raise your hand when I call your name, and we will bring the microphone to you. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside when you begin your testimony. We have Susan Haverman, Paul Mozina, Nick David, and Amy Gunter.
Hello.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Havman. I'm a nurse. I live in Ashland. I was a nurse 33 years at Ashland Community Hospital. 22 of those years, I was the surgery manager. I want to let everyone know in this room that our 119-year-old hospital, which has served thousands of people, birthed thousands of babies. There's one right there. General hospital function will be closed. And the smoke and mirrors is that it will remain open for lab, imaging, and ER. What will eventually happen is that will wither and die. So we truly are going to lose a hospital we've had here in our community 119 years. I know from my own experience how beneficial, how easy, how simple that hospital was and serving the people of this community and other surrounding communities. We need Rogue Regional Medical Center, but we absolutely need Ashland Hospital in our community. It's our community hospital, and I resent the fact that Asante doesn't value it. They reaped the market value from it when they purchased it, and now it's of no use to them.
Ma'am, can you keep your comments towards the council, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. You're right. I'm sorry. Okay. So with that, I belong to Save Our Ashland Community Hospital committee that is working to turn this around. Our mission is to save our Ashland Community Hospital. Members of SOACH are passionate about maintaining accessible, affordable, and comprehensive health care in Ashland, Oregon. Our vision is to make the residents of Ashland and surrounding communities aware of Asante's plans to eliminate inpatient care and the birthing center at our Ashland Community Hospital. Our purpose is to protect current healthcare services so that residents of Ashland can get timely assessment and intervention. Having Ashland Community Hospital will provide prompt access to care, reducing poor outcomes and improving on the delivery of life-saving measures. We direct the City of Ashland to use all lawful and financially responsible actions to preserve, restore, and reestablish a full-service general hospital in Ashland. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Mozina. I live in Ashland. This is regarding the council's actions while adopting the 2025-2027 biennial budget. On May 19, 2025, at a study session, the council amended the 2025-2027 biennial budget. This item was not on the agenda, and this action violated Oregon open meetings laws. Then at the June 3rd business meeting, the Deputy City Administrator, Jordan Brooklyn, falsely claimed that the council had amended the budget, quote, via motion, quote. There was no motion or vote. Furthermore, the council never had a motion or vote on the amendments to the 2025-2027 biennial budget that they made at the May 19th study session in violation of 2 sections of the Ashland Charter. The document below that I'm about to read from is a response from the Oregon Department of Revenue to my request that they look into the timing of the council's amendments to the budget and the public hearing. I asserted that the council violated ORS 294.453 and the Department of Revenue agreed. From the letter. ORS 294.453 requires that the governing body hold a hearing on the budget as approved by the Citizens Budget Committee. ORS 294.456 allows the governing body to make changes to the approved budget only after the budget hearing. That amended budget can then be adopted by the governing body, although in some cases a second hearing may be required. Based on review of the minutes and video from the budget hearing and adoption on June 3rd, 2025, City Council meeting, the hearing was held on an amended version of the budget rather than the budget as approved by the Budget Committee. While the changes were within the authority of the council to make and did not require a second hearing, they could only be made after the budget hearing and prior to adoption. They could only be made after the budget hearing and prior to adoption. That would be an amendment process. You're all familiar with when you pass legislation, when you make laws and change things, you amend them, you have a vote and motion on the amendment. You amended that budget at a study session. You never took a vote on it. And the city attorney sent me a pathetic email trying to explain it all. And I tried to file a complaint with our chief of police who's responsible for enforcing the Ashland Charter, and he did nothing. He said, oh, the city attorney responded to you. It's all good, isn't it, Mr. Mozina? Now have a nice day. The chief of police is obligated to enforce the charter, and he did nothing. Standing right there, he did nothing. And you amended that budget without taking a vote and violated 2 sections of the charter. The Department of Revenue has ruled that you did not follow the proper procedures and you had to wait till after the hearing to amend that budget, and you didn't. It's a fact.
Thank you. Nick David, followed by Amy Gunter.
Mayor Graham, council members, I'm Nick David, and I'm here in the spirit of solutions. The fiscal picture is well documented, a $2.4 million structural deficit at best, healthcare above forecast for 260 employees, 6, maybe 7 union contracts not fully funded, a shuttered city hall, federal dollars shrinking. The arithmetic does not work well with the toolkit that we've been using. 2 traditional levers are on the table: cut services or raise revenues. Last night you heard a version of each. Both applied honestly would damage what makes Ashland Ashland, in my opinion. There is a third lever, and it belongs at the top of every agenda until this gap closes. Modernize the operation before you cut or tax. Concretely, that means meeting minutes produced in minutes instead of days, something Ashland's own clerk's office or recorder has already employed. Permit intake that triages completeness the same day as an application is submitted. Constituent inquiries routed and answered at any hour within the resident's ability to understand. This is the kind of work where hours required have collapsed into, where the hours required have collapsed in the last 3 years into just minutes. Peer cities our size, like Saratoga, Bowling Green, and Chattanooga, actually are already running this way using modern tools. We have the Ashland Fiber Network, the university, the practitioners on the city's own payrolls. We are not behind because we lack the capability. We're behind because we have not decided to embrace it. On the building fee proposal, a 20% increase closes the gap on the revenue side and does nothing on the cost side. So before approving it, I would suggest directing the Community Development Department to come back with a plan for what it has done to reduce its own cost to permit. Ashland's total cost of development, including like permit fees, charges, SDCs, and of course the underlying land, are high compared to other nearby areas. Raising fees in a small town that names cost of living as its top concern is not leadership, it's just the easy answer. On the strategic plan, residents have told you for a decade that what their top concern is: affordability. You do not need another survey to confirm it. You need a plan with targets, dates, and consequences. May is not too early. And since I have just a few seconds left, I just wanted to say that there's, considering all these additional costs that Brandon Goldman was presenting last night, especially on the city permit side, it just feels like absolutely wrong timing. When we should be incentivizing growth, we should not be disincentivizing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Gunter, followed by Nathan Carnley.
Good evening, councilors, mayor, staff, and citizens of Ashland. I am Amy Gunter with Road Planning and Development Services. I'm here to speak on the importance of housing, all housing, and I am speaking to a new business item, which is the Affordable Housing Trust Funds a little bit, but there's not opportunity for public comment during that. So I'm just gonna throw in some comments regarding the Affordable House Trust, the new business item. I don't know which one it is, but the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
There will be opportunity to speak at that point.
Is there? Okay, I'm sorry. I will wait. I'll hold my comments till then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan Carnley? Hope I got that right.
Perfect. Hey, good evening, folks. My name is Nathan Carnley. I'm a new student here at SOU, so I'm new to town and have definitely been struck by the small town and old USA charm of Ashland. And so, based on a cursory search of just poking around, one of the things that has struck me is what appears to be like high degree of food insecurity in Ashland. Based on some of that initial search, nearly half of Ashland residents experience some kind of food insecurity, with almost 20% of that being elderly and another 20% being youth. And I want to bring this up in the context of some of the global trends and just pose the question initially with a combination of rising fuel costs in conjunction with the China recently halting all exports of sulfuric acid, one of the key elements in producing fertilizers, and pose that question before, in a hypothetical worst case scenario, what that could look like for Ashland as a town already experiencing some degree of food insecurity, and just put that on our radar. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now to our public hearing on 2026-2027 Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Award and Action Plan. Sabrina?
So tonight, we're going to award our federal funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program. Linda Reed here, our housing specialist, will walk us through the recommendations for award, and then council, we will need a motion from you to approve that action.
If you can push on the microphone. There you
Good
go.
evening. Hi. I'm Linda Reed, Housing Program Manager for the City of Ashland, and I'm here to give a brief presentation about the Community Development Block Grant applications for 2026. So in January, the city issued a request for proposals. In response to that request, we received one application from Maslow Project for a total of $18,000 to continue the work that they are doing in the Ashland School District with homeless and at-risk families. The staff and the Housing and Human Services Committee reviewed the application and heard a presentation from the applicant. And both the Housing Commission and the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee and the city staff are recommending a full award to Maslow. Upon your approval of that award, city staff would draft the action plan for the use of community development block grant funds and submit that to HUD. We did receive our final allocation notice from HUD recently. It is a decrease in funding than we have been receiving in the past couple of years. The full award for program year 2026 is $151,329. This does not impact the request that Maslow has made, so there's still enough funding within the public service cap that they can receive their full award. That will leave us with a balance of $103,000 and some change, and staff is what we would normally do is we would just hold that funding over into the following program year and offer it with our next round of funding. And that amount of money will not jeopardize our timeliness threshold with HUD. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Linda. I'm curious, how do we move forward next year to either solicit more applications or differently?
Right. So, we receive a relatively small allocation, maybe almost the smallest allocation in the country of CDBG funding. So it's not a huge amount of money, which isn't a lot of inducement for developers unless they have experience with this type of funding. It is regulatorily burdensome to use this funding for a relatively small amount. So that's one of the benefits of having a remaining balance in our allocation that we can carry over into the next program year, is that then we'll have more money to offer, which might be an added inducement to a developer to utilize that funding. And we can certainly, do more outreach. It does depend on timing and availability of development activity.
Okay, I remember, wasn't Maslow the recipient last year?
So,
Did we have
yes.
other recipients too?
Not in this year, but we have in the past. So Maslow has been getting funding for this activity from the city, from this specific fund, for a number of years. Aura has gotten some funding in the past. St. Vincent de Paul got funding from this program for several years. So that pot of money that they are requesting funding from is called the Public Service activity, which is limited to 15% of our overall allocation, but it is for direct service activities and not for capital improvement. And so the lion's share of the money is reserved for capital projects, which are, fewer and farther between. So the public service money can be more competitive.
Okay, well, thank you for your good work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Linda, question looking at this. Maslow applied for and received 18,000. We have 24,395 sitting there. I understand holding on to some of that, but $8,300 holding on to that when that can be used now. The price of eggs, the price of bread, the price of school lunches are not going down next year. Why would we not allocate the balance of this now and use that now?
I believe that in prior years, the council has allocated the full amount of the public service funding to Maslow. They didn't request it, but I'm sure they would be happy to accept it if you wanted to award them the full public service funding. And I don't think that it would make, a whole lot of difference in the long run for next year's allocation.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Yeah. And I ask Sabrina here, so is there any kind of budget issues? It's sitting there ready to be used.
So it's
no
only
one
allowed
else-
to be used in this way.
Correct,
So
right.
I think to Linda's point, Maslow asked for 18,000, so we are recommending we award what they asked for. I think you could offer them more, but not being familiar with their project, they may not be interested in it.
Understood, and they could always decline if they wanted to, correct? Okay.
Yeah,
just
so I
checking.
think
All right.
alternatively, we can just keep it in the fund, we'll reissue, we'll have the same process next year, we'll have more to award.
All
And
right.
I think right now, it's a particularly difficult time for service providers, especially around capital projects. So we may have more interest in the future.
Thank you.
So
Do we have an answer?
No. I did talk with Maslow earlier this evening. They're not here tonight, but they did want to express their gratitude for past awards, and that they have always enjoyed the service they provide in this community and the support from this community. So with the reduced allocation, which is not what was advertised, the actual amount of public service funding available is $22,699. So just for the purposes of your motion, if you wanted to amend it, that would be the number to use.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as a follow-up, because this is a competitive grant, I know that very often it's the case where applicants, I know from being on that side of the grant requesting space, that applicants will often not ask for the full amount because they're expecting that it needs to be spread out across a variety of different places, so there is a kind of a consideration that often happens. I don't claim to know if that's the case with Maslow Project, but I would expect that they can certainly make good use of it. And people are hurting right now. We've heard some testimony about that, but we know it's the case, and those prices are going to keep going. So, is there any other questions for the council, for staff? Okay, the floor is. Did you have a question? I do need to open the hearing. I will open the public hearing. Jordan, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this issue? Okay, I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to award the competitively available 2026 Community Development Block Grant funds as follows. $22,699 to the Maslow Project Public Service Project.
Second. Councillor Bloom.
Maslow is an incredible organization, and the fact that they are willing to do this work in Ashland and help our homeless youth cannot be overstated, the benefit they provide this community. So I'm very happy to provide them the full amount, and I'm sure they will keep applying, and I'm sure we'll keep giving.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, very similar. I think I want to thank the Housing and Human Services Committee for their great work in reviewing all these proposals. We're going to see a whole bunch of them from different pockets later this evening. And in this one, I think it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and award the full amount that's available. It's only a very small amount over what they had asked for. So I'm fully happy to support this motion.
Any further discussion? Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just real quick, we talk a lot about trying our best up here to put our resources to highest and best use, and to use a line from Councillor Sherrill. And a lot of times we work through that, and it's difficult, but this one is about as easy as it gets. So thank you again, Linda, for all your work. Thank you to Maslow.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Jordan.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have the resolutions approving a supplemental budget as the next item.
Yes, Mayor, and this will need a public hearing as well. So Bryn Morrison, our interim finance director, is here tonight. So we had work done on both Pioneer Hall and the community center. We had costs overrun during that, and so this is a request to transfer money from our general fund contingency to our capital improvement fund to make that fund whole, to ensure we are in proper order with our finances moving forward. And with that, we are happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Bloom.
Hi, thank you, Bryn. But this is going to go in a little bit different direction. I gave Sabrina a heads up I was going to ask. So I figured this would be a really good opportunity to kind of do a little bit of a after action report and see what kind of lessons we've learned and takeaways. So maybe the gentleman in the back might help, because it's not really a finance question. It's more of a project question. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. So I was hoping you kind of just give us an idea. So obviously we're having to kind of do the supplemental budget. We went over budget, and we're all familiar because we went through that process of kind of what happened with the community center specifically and its structural issues. So if you could kind of just give a breakdown of why that was for the community, so they understand why we went over budget on that.
So one of the things that kind of I've learned when you're remodeling a significantly older structure, as you start to open it up, you find more problems and issues as you get deeper into the woodwork of the system. And that's generally what happened with both Pioneer Hall and the community center. And that's why we had a pause early into the project, where we came back to the council and spoke about orders of magnitude of costing of the rehabilitation versus construction of a new facility. Because Outlier brought that to us and we had that conversation. The city council initiated the management advisory committee that went through, and we had a couple of meetings to discuss the rehabilitation versus demolition and construction of a new facility. And the MAC made their recommendation to continue with the rehabilitation, but some minor modifications to that. And that's what the city council agreed upon. As part of the overall process, when we met early on with contractors in a pre-bid meeting, one of the things that they said is, we are going to find things, and we recommend that you have some level of contingency line item to start in the project. So we had to make a judgment call on what that number would be. And as we got deeper into everything, we knew that that wasn't going to be enough money to cover the additional costs associated with the changes. There was things from additional asbestos mitigation that occurred, changing out the electrical wiring to bring it up to current code and support the HVAC systems in there. Additional foundation work that came up from poor soils that were discovered after you started excavating and digging down. So all of that kind of snowballed down the hill with the additional recommendations to where we ended up here with the additional need to cover the cost. One of the things that I will say is we started this project as a design bid build project, and that's how we finished it. For projects like this, similar projects moving forward, and what we did on 2200 is we did a design build project where we had architect and engineer working directly with the general contractor on that process. So they were helping identify some potential hotspots or unknowns. And so moving forward, and we've talked about this from the staff side, you know, any sort of remodeling, renovations we do in city facilities, we would look to do a design build process instead of a design bid build process. I'll give you an example. It was $975,000 for the modifications to 2200. On the construction side, we ended up with a $12,000 change order in gross for that project. So that worked out fairly efficiently from a costing basis. And so that's what's triggered me and the staff team to look at that option primarily moving forward, specifically to building modifications.
A quick follow-up. Thank you so much, Scott. That's exactly what I was hoping we'd all hear. And I'm glad that we're learning and taking lessons. It's always helpful. And so going forward, when we talk about City Hall and rehabilitation of City Hall, this is going to be part of that conversation. I imagine that, and then also probably having a larger contingency since it is a much, much bigger project, right?
Yeah, we would look at having, you know, a different structure in the bid tab, and we would develop that working with the architect, engineer, and contractor is part of that overall evaluation. I would say there would probably be more interest in doing some initial demolition and inspection of some of the structure to make better judgments and decisions as part of the engineering part of the process itself.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your expertise.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Scott. Those things happen. I can't imagine what you found underneath those two buildings after 100 and some odd years, or close to it. So I appreciate Councillor Bloom bringing that up, but that actually lends itself to even a larger question that I might direct over to Sabrina and Bryn to kind of tag team relative to this is as we learn through this, you know, capital expenses are just going to be part of government life and what we do. Anything that we would learn from like a high level, whereas we go in later this evening, we're going to be appointing budget committee folks. So it'd be maybe a nice time to maybe tease things we're thinking about as we go into 27, 29 relative to capital projects and things like this that come up and how we're improving and learning from this and ideas moving forward.
Yeah, I think similar to our conversation last night about a building fund, you know, having the capital fund and having money in the capital fund to address items like this and kind of future plan for repairs and capital needs is a positive thing. So, you know, historically we've had capital within budgets, just general fund line. But given the magnitude of the amount of projects we probably have in the future and will continue to have, I think having a dedicated fund, which most likely will involve putting general fund money in there, but keeping it, separate from operations, I think would be a good step towards transparency in how we operate.
Excellent. Thanks, Sabrina.
Any other questions? Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, just so we have the numbers right as well. Bryn, could you just, this is a request for a transfer from the contingency, the general fund contingency fund, because there are contingencies and other funds as well. From the general fund contingency, what is the balance currently in the contingency fund from which we're transferring?
Contingency in the general fund for the biennium is just over 2.5 million.
Okay, and how much have we used so far?
Zero.
Zero, so this should use $200,000 of that?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
If there are no further questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, I move approval of
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Hold up. I open the public hearing. Jordan, has anyone signed up to speak? That's the trouble of not having anyone sign up to speak. Okay, I close the public hearing. Councillor Bloom?
I move approval of Resolution 2026-03, approving a supplemental budget and budget appropriation adjustments for the 25-27 biennial budget period beginning July 1st, 2025.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing this. This is obviously the legal requirement and what we need to be doing anyways. And, you know, it's I think that it's leading to a good conversation in the future about how we're going to be using our contingency and ending fund balances to start to take care of our buildings. So thank you.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, likewise, thanks for bringing this. I think, as Councilor Bloom said, this is something that we needed to do in order to backfill this. I think the larger issue is the one that was alluded to by Councilor Dale and the city manager, that trying to fund pretty major capital projects out of our operating general fund is probably a recipe for not budgeting sufficient towards those things and adding additional stress to our general fund. So I think that's another conversation we'll have for another time, and I'm looking forward to finding ways to move forward and make sure that we're dealing with these needs more expeditiously.
Any further discussion? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting this. I think the community really wanted to remodel Pioneer and the community hall. There was another option on the table, which was to build new, which had a more firm number to it. And the community decided to go this way. And there was a MAC that was formed. So I just wanted to acknowledge that was a win for those that really wanted this. And our product, I think, is beautiful. It's a great investment. But moving forward, there were lessons learned, and this community will have to make judgment calls on whether we are going to go down the remodel rabbit hole or rebuild. And I think the buy-in from the community from this last process was great, and we'll have those decisions to make. And I'm happy to support backfilling. I think we got a great product for less money than building new. So I'm happy to support this. And also lessons learned. We have a laundry list of things to work on here in the future and limited resources. Thank you.
That was going to be my comment, is it turned out beautifully. And knowing, having gone over and taken a look at the foundation troubles that were spotted, I can tell you that now that we see it completely done, I'm just so grateful that we have people who know how to fix things like that we find in the middle of construction projects. So thank you, Scott, to you and your team, and also to Bryn, to you and your team in finance. If there is no further discussion, roll call, please, Jordan.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion
Thank
passes.
you. Thank you both. So we are now to ordinances, resolutions, and contracts. Approval of a construction contract with Institutiform Technologies for the wastewater collection rehabilitation CIPP construction project PW 2024-28. Sabrina.
Tonight, we are here to ask for your authority as a contracting review board to approve a contract. We may have a video.
Of course we have
Got a video, so it's a good night. So I'll let Scott take it from here.
So before the council is a construction contract recommendation for approval with Institutiform Technologies for what we call CIPP, or cured in place pipeliner, for a wastewater collection system and for a storm drain conveyance pipe. We solicited this project formally with an invitation to bid. It was posted on Oregon Buys, Notice, and Daily Journal of Commerce following the Oregon procurement rules. We received 2 responsive bids with Institutiform providing the low responsive bid. And for those of you who don't know what CIPP is, it's basically an epoxy resin liner that is heat formed within the conveyances themselves. And what this does is severely extends the life of that infrastructure asset. And it also allows us to cost effectively extend the life of that asset through this mechanism. So we don't have to open trench and replace the pipelines. The epoxy liner creates a new structural pipeline inside the older pipeline itself. It's very valuable and useful to do in locations where access is severely limited. Years ago, we did one on the trunk line along Ashland Creek, next to Ashland Creek Park. We did this project a biennium and a half ago as well, and it worked out incredibly well from the collection side of things. And that's why, as part of this, we're requesting that the council authorize the additional expenditure over what we originally budgeted for this project, because it will generally resolve about 70% of our known sewer issues. And so just a quick video. They take video of each segment of the sewer and storm drain line before and after. So they ensure that it properly adhered to the surface. They also, as you know, everyone has a sewer lateral connection that comes into the sewer pipe, so they make sure that those laterals are free and clear. After they send that epoxy liner down there, they send a robot down there that cuts out all of those laterals and restores people, community members, individual services to that sewer main. So here we go.
Do we need to issue a parental guidance warning?
There's no crocodiles or alligators within the sewer here. You're safe.
Other things.
So this is a 6-inch concrete line, live flowing. So they're doing their initial camera inspection on this line. Oops. It's hard without a mouse. And you can see kind of the flow line. It's spalled out of concrete. And the crews have identified these lines as being priority to get this treatment. So afterwards, they go back, and as I said, they make sure that everything adhered and is properly formed. So this is kind of a clean, brand new epoxy lined pipe. So you can see that there's no more kind of spalling of the concrete. It has a new lower friction surface for flow in that. And so they do this for every one of those pipe segments that they perform the repair on itself. And as you see, no crocodiles, no sewer rats as part of this. So with that being said, the request is for council to authorize the construction contract. It is exceeding what we actually budgeted for in the CIP itself, but we have additional funds within our infrastructure line. And we also have another capital project that is dependent on development. And we know that that development is not going to hit within this current biennium. So we would resource some of those funds towards this project.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. So Scott, I just saw there that Bryn just exited stage left. So I'll ask you this question without exact specifics, but we'll get in the ballpark. So in orders of magnitude, how much is this saving the city of Ashland over, the next, I mean, it's several is what I'm thinking. I mean, we are doing the right thing here to save so much money in the future relative to the infrastructure of our wastewater, correct?
If we had to open trench and replace all of these lines, we're probably at least talking 3 to 4 orders of magnitude. It's a significant, because a lot of these are on residential property through easements. So we would have to go through a residential property, tear up your landscape, and repair that and put it to the pre-existing condition after we left. On top of the pipeline costs right now, so we know oil, PVC pipe is extremely expensive. So that cost has gone up. The cost of all of the equipment and diesel and all that stuff relative to doing an open trench is pretty significant now relative to doing something like this.
Thank you, Scott.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you. 9,524 linear feet. It's 1.8 miles. It's a lot. I'm curious. So they put this in the pipe. How do they inflate it and get it to cure? I'm just curious. Like, I gotta know. This is magic.
They steam heat it.
So they pump in steam?
They pump in steam heat, yes. And so basically, they fabricate each segment in an it's like an epoxy sock, epoxy resin sock. And they float it down the pipeline, and then they steam cure it to the wall of the pipe. And it only takes a few hours. It expands up, and that sock is sized to touch the wall of that pipeline. And if any of you have been around, any sort of fiberglass manufacturing and resin manufacturing, it has a pretty distinct odor. And we found out the last time that it will off-gas kind of that odor. What they have invented now is kind of the snifferama technology, where you can have an odor applied to it. And I believe Chance said there was two options. It was strawberry and banana, and they selected strawberry for this go-around. So anywhere in your neighborhood where this is occurring, you might smell strawberry.
Well, thank you for that, demystifying the magic. And as to Councilor Dale's questions in terms of infrastructure investment, if you're one of those landowners that this is going underneath your soil, you are stoked that we're not digging up your soil. And we do have the amount budgeted and future monies figured out. So
correct.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Councilor Kaplan.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Scott. So you said that we've used this a few times. You said, I think, the previous two previous bienniums maybe you've used it. So we've had good experience with it. What's the expected lifespan of this technology?
So my understanding of under normal conditions is at least another 50 to 75 years of lifespan. So you know your initial concrete pipe has a 50 to 75 year lifespan based on soil conditions and other impacts. So you're essentially doubling clay or concrete lifespan.
And just to follow up, and I understand that we've got a variety of materials in our sewer network. This you've talked about concrete pipe. Does this work well on other materials as well that we encounter in our system?
So what we're primarily applying it to is concrete and clay pipelines that we have in the system.
Thank you.
So I have a follow-up to Councilor Dale's question, and that is, it strikes me that this is a similar situation to our streets, where if we allow them to degrade to a certain point, they can't be rehabbed. Is that the case? Is that how we should be thinking about these pipes? Is that if we were to let them continue to kind of go on the path that they're on, at some point we don't have the option of doing this? And is that how we should be thinking about this?
Generally, yes. Everything in the system is going to age out at some point. And there's a couple different methods to, replace them or rehabilitate them. You can use this technology on water lines, pressure water lines as well. And we've talked about that in certain locations where excavation is an issue, depth is an issue, and things like that. So at some point, everything is going to age out. And this protects that infrastructure at a relatively inexpensive cost overall. So if you ask our wastewater collection supervisor, this is probably his greatest project that he's ever been involved with here, just from a facility maintenance standpoint. And that's why he's super supportive of, using some of his internal infrastructure dollars to help support this. The other thing that this does is helps with the infiltration related issues. So we have, cracks and tree roots that break those pipelines. Well, this reseals that section and doesn't allow groundwater to infiltrate the pipe. And by reducing the groundwater that infiltrates the pipe, we reduce the impact to the wastewater treatment plant from a treatment process standpoint as well. So that was one of the things that was a significant recommendation out of the last collection system master plan, was really looking at your inflow and infiltration to try to reduce that to the maximum extent feasible because it protects the downstream process.
Great. And I would imagine also that doing a larger project is cheaper per foot than doing a smaller one.
And that's what we found out bidding this project and in consultation with Medford, because they do a couple of these as well. They do a lot of storm drain lining, and they found out the bigger the project, the better value you get from a bid standpoint.
Great, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Councilor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Scott. Just some questions. I want to know worst case scenario stuff. So there's a little bit of concern always when we're going with the easier process. It's the best way is always to dig up not always the best way, but to get the best product. We're going to replace a pipe on grade, the degradation, the root intrusion, all that stuff. We're looking at the lowest bid for maybe the easier, more affordable way. But what do we have in place for insurance if we have bellies in the line, or we've seen this often where they miss laterals that don't get routed out? Like, what kind of policy do we have to make sure that our investment's protected? And then who's inspecting this process? I mean, do we have an engineer on site inspecting them as we go? And how do we avoid price creep? I mean, we just looked at a couple of contracts that we had to give some more money to. Like, how do we not have that happen here?
So we kind of have an invested process as part of this. We camera the lines, and our collection system supervisor makes the recommendations of which lines this should apply to. Then under the contract, they go out and camera the lines, verify the condition, verify the lengths, verify the diameters, and the company is responsible for building everything to the parameter that they set through their visual inspection or their camera inspection. If they find that something has changed since our inspection and what we recommend, we will go out to the site and make repairs as part of that. So say if a section of pipe had crumbled or broken, it's our collections crew's obligation to go out there and make that repair. If there is a belly that they say, this won't work from our standpoint until that belly gets flattened out, we will go out and make that spot repair as part of that. If a lateral is not opened up, it's on them to resolve that issue under the contract period and under the initial 1 year. Every contract has an initial 1 year warranty period associated with it as well. So we can call them back. And then we also have one of the project managers will be out on site talking with the contractors throughout this project, generally every day, witnessing what's going on, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do in order to validate the pay requests as they come in.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and driving down like A Street, we can see all the TV marks, and you can see exactly where the pipe is and how deep it is. We can tell where they're about to work. It's interesting to see that on the street and drive around and see that money being spent well. Thanks.
Any final questions? The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Hanson.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'm honored to move to approve the construction contract with In Situ Form Technologies for the wastewater collection rehabilitation CIPP project for a contract amount not to exceed $897,905.
Second.
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, just a lot of gratitude for all of the infrastructure, maintenance, rehab, repair, keeping us going. This is a good investment for the long haul. And, we know that accidents will still happen and ratepayers will be impacted, but this is what we do to mitigate that and to keep us going. So it's a sizable chunk of money, but it's a great investment. And all that stuff that Public Works does that we don't see, touch, or feel, but benefit from every day. Just a lot of gratitude to you and staff. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, a lot of what Councillor Hanson said, and I'm just so happy to make this motion. And there's several reasons, or not make it, but second this motion. But at the top of the list now is our wastewater collection manager's unbridled exuberance at this project. I mean, that just made me super happy. But in all seriousness, though, this is something, and I've said this too. We just had the If I Were Mayor here with the young ones in here that are our future. And if you were to ask me that question, what I've learned here sitting behind this dais is the things that we take for granted. And wastewater collection is at or near the very top, and it's not an interesting topic to discuss, especially around the dinner table probably. But if you really dig into this, as I know Scott has, civilizations have risen and fallen because of wastewater and lack thereof. So it is super important. So thank you so much. It doesn't get a lot of press, but this is critical to making the city work. And then one last thing that Councillor Hanson made me think about it in the more you know category suggestion box here. We're going to really do the PR job to make sure people don't flush the toilet before the robots come and drill that little hole out when you guys are doing this, right? Okay. Perfect.
Okay. We have honestly worked around their schedules and the last projects to ensure that we don't create issues.
Well, that just shows the care that your department goes that works for our citizens. Thanks, Scott.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. Always good when you're doing a $900,000 contract to bring videos. That always sells. And I think there's also a little piece of positivity here too for marketing. right? We've got visitors come to town and it's like, yeah, that Ashland place, their wastewater smells like strawberries. It's incredible. So keep it up. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Roll call, please, Jordan.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion.
Thank you, Scott. We are now to new business. We have the Social Service Grant Awards. Sabrina?
All right, we're going to have Linda Reed, our Housing Program Manager, come back up here. But we advertise for the availability of social service grants every year. And so as a reminder to council, this money is money that council has dedicated through the budget process from the general fund to go to social service programs in the community. And with that, I'll hand it over to Linda.
Your microphone.
Thank you, Sabrina. And since she did my introduction, I won't do that again. And I'm just here to speak briefly to you about the process and the allocation. So as Sabrina stated, we issue a request for proposals for the award of social service grant funds every other year, actually. And we did so at the beginning of this year. We received 10 applications in response to that request. The Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee reviewed the applications and heard presentations from the applicants at their regular meeting in February. And the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee, excuse me, has provided a recommendation to the council regarding the allocation of those funds, which is detailed in your packet materials. I do want to point out that there is a typo in your council communication. We don't have $134,000 identified. That amount is incorrect. That's from previous years. That's the amount we've offered. The city has actually made available $99,000 for the biennium, and the awards recommended by the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee is consistent with that amount. Also here tonight, Noah Wertheiser, who is the chair of the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee, is here, so he could speak to any questions you may have of the process that they went through or the recommendations that they made. And so you'll see those recommendations in your packet. And if you have any questions, Noah or myself.
Yes, Noah will come up.
Happy to answer them.
All right, questions of staff? So we don't have any questions.
How exciting. Okay. I'm going to go back and sit down. Thank you.
You can stay there, it's fine. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor
we might have someone to speak on this.
No, it's for the housing, the next one. The Housing Trust Fund, I believe, is the speaker, correct? You're here for the Housing Trust Fund conversation? Yep, that's next. Okay. All right, so the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Kaplan?
Okay, I move to accept the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee's award recommendations, allocating the social service grant funds as follows. The Ashland Community Food Bank, $7,500. Center for Nonprofit Legal Services, $5,100. Community Works Incorporated, Dunn House, $10,180. Jackson County SART, $7,220. RV Cog Food and Friends, $8,740. Rogue Valley Mentoring, $4,500. ORA, $25,100. Southern Oregon Jobs with Justice, $8,060. St. Vincent de Paul, $15,900. And United Way, $6,700.
Second.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, I really just want to thank the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee for all the work they put in to try to, weigh all these proposals. There was significantly more requests than there was money to award, and I know that's so hard, such a hard task. These are all fabulous organizations, and I'm really happy that we can make these awards, and very thankful to our advisory committee members for the time that they dedicate to doing that work.
Councilor Bloom?
No, just to add on that these are all great organizations that do really meaningful, important work in our community. So I'm glad that they're receiving these funds.
Any further discussion? Okay. Roll call, please, Jordan.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We move now on to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Evaluation and Award. Thank you,
So-
Noah.
Once again, Linda, who's getting it done with all these things tonight. So we have 200,000 in affordable housing trust funds to allocate. So I'll let Linda go through that process. And just to note, there is a difference between the staff recommendation and the recommendation coming from the committee, which Linda will review.
Thank you, Sabrina. You keep taking all my talking points, but that's fine. So, yes, the city has issued the request for proposals for $200,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust Funds. This is funding that's dedicated from the marijuana tax funding. We received 4 applications from 3 applicants for the funding. Staff reviewed the applications to ensure eligibility and consistency with Resolution 2008-034, which sets the policies and procedures for this program, with a consolidated plan for the use of community development block grant funds, as well as with the stated council goals for this particular biennium. The Housing and Human Services Advisory Commission reviewed the applications and heard from the applicants at their regular meeting in March, and deliberated quite a bit about an award allocation. And as Sabrina mentioned, the staff recommendation and the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee's recommendations vary slightly. Both those recommendations are in your council communication. And I also want to say that I believe all of the applicants are here this evening if you have any questions of the applicants regarding their applications. Yeah, and I guess that's probably the broad overview. And I could certainly answer any questions about the process or this program. Applicants can probably answer questions about their applications, and certainly the Housing and Human Services Commission Chair Noah could answer any questions about their process.
Thank you. We will have questions of staff, and then we will invite our residents to come and speak to us who have signed up. Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, I was just hoping that staff could kind of elaborate a bit more on the, not wanting to place the contingencies and what we're hearing from OHCS on this as well, to understand the difference and for the community to understand the difference.
Could you clarify that question? Are you asking about the difference? Would you like staff to clarify the difference between the Housing and Human Services Commission recommendation and the staff recommendation, and also speak about the OHCS?
Correct. Yeah, both.
Okay,
Thank you. I
perfect.
did
Thank
a
you.
double header there.
I just wanted to make sure that I answer your question
Thank
thoroughly.
you.
So the Housing and Human Services Commission did look at the staff's recommendation and started from there, I think, and maybe Noah could speak better to this than I could, but I believe that through the discussion, it was expressed that supporting capacity building for Sunstone's second application was important to them. I think that staff did not feel like that proposal had enough merit, and that it is sometimes preferable to also maintain a balance of funding in there, which could carry over into the following year, or which could be utilized by a project if it were needing funding in the interim through a NOFO process. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak for you.
That was pretty much what I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, that's okay. With the second application, we thought capacity building, especially in a time when capacity building overall goes down, particularly with the trickle down from federal funding in terms of housing projects, from the state especially. So knowing that pool of general funds fund category is down, being able to award capacity building funds for an organization that's local was, we thought, a good idea.
So with regard to the OHCS LIFT award waitlist, and if you wanted to speak with Jessica, the executive director of Trusted Homes. She may be able to answer, or may have a different answer than I have. So essentially, I think we did not know that waitlisting was an option. We thought it would either be a yes or a no. And so when we heard that there was not a yes or a no, it was a bit of a quandary about how to move forward. And of course, we couldn't go back before the Housing and Human Services Commission to have them weigh in on that change. And so staff did reach out to Oregon Housing and Community Services LIFT program, which the acronym is Local Innovation and Fast Track Housing, I believe,
Yeah,
specifically for home ownership. Just to find out what does waitlisting mean? Does that mean that there's a high or a low probability of receiving funding? Just to get more details about what does this mean, because we have projects currently underway. And so it is noted in your council communication that staff intends to come back in May to talk with you about the request for proposals for the Beach Creek property, which is also contingent upon the LIFT funding. And essentially, what we learned from Oregon Housing and Community Services was that the application was rated very highly and is very likely to be funded, and that the next funding cycle will be at the end of September, which is not that far away, considering that we don't even do contracts until July. So it felt like it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say we can probably wait and see what happens in October, and make a different decision then if we really needed to.
Jessica?
So, and I guess that's a question as well, because when council directed that this funding this year would be focused on capacity building, I think the point was to get some assistance into the hands of some newer organizations that we have identified as wanting to support in our housing production strategy. And so my question would be around what level of disruption does this potentially cause? Because the point I think that this council was making was to get some capacity building assistance into their hands.
Well, and I would certainly turn it over to Jessica if she wanted to talk about or answer that question about what level of disruption that funding, or not receiving that funding, would cause to their organization.
Okay.
Musical chairs.
I know.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the question. And thank you very much for focusing on capacity building as a part of this grant. As was mentioned, it is a very difficult moment for nonprofits. It's very hard to find funding anywhere at the moment, which is actually exactly what happened with the LIFT program. And if I may just really quickly, the way that grant was administered in February and March is very different than how it will be administered in September. In February/March, it was administered first come, first serve. And so anybody who did not apply in the first 24 hours was not funded at all. In September, there's so much oversubscription that we will all be put in as if we had pressed send on the same moment. And so it will come down to points. And as OHCS has indicated, the Trusted Homes application scored extremely high. What I had heard is that we were one of the highest scoring applicants. So our likelihood of being funded in September is very high. It is not 100%. It's very hard to predict these things, but it is very high. In the interim, what's happening on our end is we're doing things like finalizing our stewardship manuals, setting up our LLC that will be able to receive the property from the city of Ashland, insuring that LLC, so working with lawyers, paying for insurance. And just so you know, nonprofit insurance right now is about $8,000 a year. So it's very expensive to kind of set up the mechanisms that can properly receive LIFT funding and properly receive property from the city. So there are kind of important expenses that will be incurred between July and September that I would like the council to consider. So if it were possible to release at least some of the funding before September, we would be very grateful for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up for our folks who have come to offer testimony. We have Amy Gunter, and then Jessica Thurkelson and Linda Adams. And again, please tell us your name and the city in which you reside or the organization you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start at that point. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, councilors, mayor, citizens of Ashland. My name is Amy Gunter, Rogue Planning and Development Services, and I'm here to speak on the importance of all housing and additionally speaking towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. As a housing advocate, longtime land use planner, a board member of Rogue Valley Habitat for Humanity, I've seen that housing across the affordability spectrum is critical to the stability, resiliency, and growth of a community. On this project that's part of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund grant request at 300 Clay Street, I've been working on this project for about 10 years. Since about 2015 is when we started planning this project for some affordable housing and housing development. Here we are 10 years later, land use approvals have been secured, infrastructure is nearly complete, the plat is in the finalization and review underway. The building permits for the affordable housing units are ready to be picked up once the signature is signed on the dotted line on the plat. And the affordable housing component of the new Caldera Oaks subdivision is ready to go vertical. It's in a unique position of immediate and efficient delivery of affordable housing due to the project's advanced status through the planning and development stages. Some may question why a for-profit developer should be eligible for affordable housing grants. But as someone with experience in both for-profit and not-for-profit housing development, it's really critical that all spectrums of housing developers are factored into grants like this one in particular. Not-for-profits have a unique ability, though there's not a lot of grant funding here available for housing. Historically, there's been grant funding available federally and state to only not-for-profit developers, none for affordable or none for for-profit developers. So this developer understands when he bought the property, he knew there would be an affordable housing component. It was fully expected, has no provision or issues with that affordable housing. With the construction costs of each fourplex around $1 million and only about $400,000 available in private financing and bank loans, there leaves a pretty substantial gap in construction costs. In addition to those construction costs, when this grant request was made in your packet on page 9, you'll see $49,525 was quoted as the building permit fees. That number was corrected, and the building permit fees are now $73,000 for the 2 8-unit affordable housing buildings. So the Affordable Housing Trust Funds would be applied towards the eligible costs associated with the construction, vertical construction, site utility improvements, and towards the increased unanticipated permit fees. There's no other grant requests. All matching funds come from traditional bank funding, private funding. The housing needs analysis and consolidated plan identify a critical shortage of rental housing, specifically in the 60 to 80% bracket, and this housing is in 80%. We support the staff recommendation towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund grant money. Thank you very much.
Jessica Thurkelson.
Hi again, Mayor and councilors. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Jessica Thurkelson, as mentioned. I'm the Executive Director of Trusted Homes, the new community land trust for affordable housing in Ashland and the Rogue Valley. I'm one of the founders and joined here by a couple other founders of our organization. We want to thank you for your continued leadership and your support of community-centered housing solutions here in Ashland. And I want to express appreciation for the ways that the city has shown willingness to think creatively about how we ensure that our community remains accessible and vibrant into the future. And for us, that's where a community land trust like Trusted Homes really comes in not that we are helpful as part of the solution, but we are as an essential part of the picture of our future. So a community land trust is a simple but powerful model. It separates ownership of land from ownership of the home. The land is held permanently by a nonprofit on behalf of the community, while residents purchase and own their homes at an affordable price. In Ashland, sometimes that price might be half of what the home would have sold for at market. The homeowner then agrees to limit their resale, ensuring that the home remains affordable for the next family and the next and the next. So this model creates what our community urgently needs: permanent affordability, not just for one buyer, but for generations to come. The Housing Trust Fund provides flexible local funding needed to actually make these homes possible. As you know, we're relatively shovel-ready, pending our source of funding from the state. And once we begin construction, these will be our first 6 permanently affordable homes in the Beech Creek development. We are also working on another 12 permanently affordable homes in Ashland and another 10 to 12 in Talent, although that is outside of your purview, of course. Importantly, when these Housing Trust Fund dollars are invested in community land trusts, they don't just support one household, they're recycled, they're preserved. The public investment stays on the property permanently, serving family after family over time. So it's one of the most efficient and impactful ways of using local housing dollars that are available to us. This also allows us as a nonprofit to leverage additional funding. So your investment to us allows us to prove to other donors that we are supported by the community around us. And we can leverage that for philanthropy and other sources of funding. So the City of Ashland's support through both the Housing Trust Fund and broader commitment to community land trusts and enormous support from staff has a lasting ripple effect. So we just want to say thank you and encourage you to continue investing in these solutions. The need is real, and so are the opportunities being presented here. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Adams?
Linda Adams with my Trusted Homes Board Secretary hat on tonight. I want to begin by expressing our deep gratitude for the city's ongoing partnership. Trusted Homes would not be here where it is today without the city's foundational support, specifically through previous grant funding that allowed us to establish our roots. Furthermore, the technical guidance and professional advice from Linda Reed and Brandon Goldman has been invaluable. Their expertise has helped ensure our model aligns perfectly with Ashland's long-term housing goals. We see tonight's request as the natural progression of this successful collaborative relationship. As a board, we don't just look at housing as units or structures. We view it as the bedrock of community stability. The funding request before you tonight from the Housing Trust Fund is a vital investment in that stability. It represents the city's partnership in a model that moves beyond temporary subsidies toward permanent, multi-generational affordability. What makes the CLT model different and why it deserves this specific funding is the 99-year ground lease. When the city invests in trusted homes, that money stays in the land. When a family eventually moves on from Beech Creek, they earn a fair return on their investment, but the home remains affordable for the next eligible family and the next. As board secretary, I see the rigorous stewardship that goes into this. We will provide the education and support to ensure our homeowners succeed, maintaining a foreclosure rate that is historically 10 times lower than the national average. We aren't just building houses, we are building a resilient foundation for our future. Tonight, you have the opportunity to leverage the Housing Trust Fund for its highest and best use, creating a permanent asset for the people of Ashland. On behalf of the Trusted Homes Board, the future residents of Beech Creek, and the other families who will become a part of a constellation of permanently affordable homes throughout the Rogue Valley, I urge you to approve this funding. Let's ensure that the beauty and opportunity of Ashland remain accessible to all who call this valley home. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
Yes, I move to award the 2026 Affordable Housing Trust Funds as follows. Sunstone Ashland Attainable Housing Project, $25,000. Sunstone Capacity Building, $25,000. Trusted Homes, $75,000. And Bentella LLC, $75,000.
Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, great. All good organizations doing good things, and I appreciate the constant progress. And I also just want to call out, I think it's nice to see a new organization, though be it a private for-profit organization, coming to the fold, and it shows that we can all do this together if we put our minds to it, and it doesn't really matter how it's done. Building housing is what matters.
Councilor Sherrill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Bloom. I agree with all that, and I wish there was more money to give away. We need to make this investment. It takes time, and it takes money, and it takes dedicated people, and we're lucky to have you, and I couldn't be more happy to support this.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, I also am happy to support this. And again, I want to shout out to the Housing and Human Services Committee that struggled, to try to figure out how to really allocate the money. Again, there was more money requested than there was available. And I think the discussion was quite spirited and landed in a very good place. So thanks again to the committee.
Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, this was a pipe dream 3 or 4 years ago, and I'd like to thank those consuming cannabis out there to get this money on the table to fund the pipe dream that we have here. In all seriousness, really, I mean, to everybody's credit who's been working on this, Sunstone, Trusted Homes, Bentella, thank you all so much for going out on a limb, City of Ashland for supporting this and all the efforts that are happening in other arenas to support affordable housing. It's an exciting time to be sitting back here in the seat and be a part of this. So thank you all very much and congratulations.
I would just add that over the last many years since this fund was established, we've protected it in the budget. Even though we weren't entirely sure how to leverage it the very best way, we knew that there was an importance in protecting even this small amount of money, and that at some point the pathway would emerge. And we put out a call a couple of years ago with our housing production strategy, and we said we need to have some partners in the community that can do certain things that the city can't do. And people stepped up and they built those organizations. And I think what I'm so proud of today is that there has been so much progress, and that it is clear from the council what we're looking to support. So we've narrowed that down. We've done some strategic thinking around how do we really lever this money for affordable housing, and just so proud to see the way that the community has responded, and also to see that for-profit developers are stepping in accordance with the policies that we have in place to make sure that this variety of housing gets built. Roll call, please. Jordan.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. We are going to take a 5-minute break. Let's be back in our seats at 7:50 by this clock. I call the meeting back to order. We are to the request for council to reconsider direction on lawn hours. Sabrina?
Yes, per the direction that we received from City Council on April 13th at the special meeting, we are bringing this item back for consideration. We have received feedback from both police and their service providers and some advocates that we potentially want to rework the hours that council put in place at that meeting. And so currently our recommendation is to move the operating hours to 4:30 p.m. to 8 a.m., plus retain the 24-hour occupancy on the weekends and federal holidays as outlined by council. And with that, the chief and I are here to answer any questions.
Chief, did you want to provide any additional information for us?
Just a little bit. Ty O'Mara, Police Chief. Again, and I don't want to rehash what we said at the special meeting, and I respect that this is a delicate balance and that the council is trying to be responsive to behavioral issues at Garfield Park. If we lean back in toward 24/7 operations, I think we're inviting several issues, including the rat infestation that we had before, so I think we need to maintain the right balance. The one thing that I do want to mention, and this was brought to my attention today, given the criminal activity on the night lawn over the last few days, it was brought to my attention today that the night lawn, a city-owned property, is flirting with meeting the definition under city code of being a chronic nuisance property, that there's repeated negative behavior in a space, and it's not quite there, but it's getting to the point that if it were another property in town, I would probably be generating a letter to the property owner saying, these are the incidents that are happening, please rectify the situation, so we don't have to file a chronic nuisance motion through the city attorney's office. And other than that, I don't have anything additional to say.
So questions? Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. I've got a few questions, but I'll start with just a couple based on what you said. And I really appreciate you saying and calling out delicate balance, because if anything, this is it. And I completely understand that. Two questions. Number one is, and maybe Sabrina would be able to speak to it too, because she mentioned it, but can either of you speak to further articulate the feedback that you've received from the service providers, just so we can hear from it. And then the other thing is can you forget the hours for a second? Can you go into what you mean? Like, how would we properly enforce or take action or whatever needs to be done from an enforcement standpoint to make sure that we don't further go down the chronic nuisance road based on what your officers are seeing?
These are very big questions. I'll start with the first one, and I don't think that Dan Kano would mind me saying this. I have heard him verbalize support for the hours not being adjusted as greatly as they were in the moment a couple of weeks ago, and that perhaps some adjustments are needed, but something more in line with what we're requesting today. I've heard that from some homeless advocates as well. One of the huge deficiencies of this operation is that there's nobody to manage it. And it falls to the only people that are here right next door 24/7 to manage it, which is the police officers. We don't want to manage it. The people out there don't want us to manage it. The people that are professional, so nobody wants us to manage it. But because nobody else does, it falls to us. And so we are left with using the only tools that we have, which are not ideal for the situation, such as expelling people from a piece of city-owned land under threat of arrest if they return, taking enforcement action when people are taking too long dragging their property off of the night lawn into the parking lot, because of course that's a totally different violation, that city-owned parking spaces can only be used for parking motor vehicles. So when you're occupying 2 or 3 spaces to dry off your tent or reorganize your belongings, you know, we want to turn a blind eye and let that go on, but eventually we have to do something about it. We don't want to be in that position, but it just falls to us. That's the only ability we have to wrangle this situation on a day-to-day basis. I'm not sure if that even came close to answering your question.
No, I think it did, Chief, and we just spent quite a bit of time looking at innovative new ways for housing and other things and so forth, and I think we owe it to look at innovative ways to understand what we can do better this, but I really appreciate the forthrightness in which you explained that. Appreciate it. It helps.
Thank you.
Counselor, there was another question. Counselor Blue. Oh, so it's been answered. Counselor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chief, for taking hard questions again. You talked about not having the tools, or your staff not having the tools. Even if we take this into consideration and we look at reducing the time that we have guests on the lawn, removing that 3.5 hours a day, and granting the 24 hours on the weekends and on federal holidays, what tools could this body give you that would help you mitigate those problems that you're going to have for all those other hours anyway? And I mean, maybe like social services within your ranks, or dedicating, maybe hiring an officer that's also cross-trained. Like what kind of tools are your peers using?
I don't think I have a great answer for that in the moment, but somebody in a police uniform wearing a badge and a gun, I think, is already at a deficit in trying to navigate these interactions with unhoused people. I think that is already setting the less than ideal tone. So I'm open to exploring at the appropriate time, us having somebody on staff that's better trained, the police officers being somehow cross-trained. But in the end, I think if we're going to really look for an ideal thing, we should let police officers be police officers, hopefully in the most compassionate, professional, ethical way possible. And we should let social service providers provide social services, ensure the cops and the social service workers can partner. And I think that we do. I'm sure we could always do more. But I think starting off from a position of how do we reach our goal through a uniformed police officer, I think that's already fighting an uphill battle, and it's not going down the ideal path, kind of by definition. This work shouldn't fall to us. It should fall to the professionals that know how to do it.
Can I follow up with a question? I think I would have to probably agree with you on that, but given the last couple of years of having to do that work, I mean, do you see an end in sight?
I'm glad that we're talking about it. I'm glad that there seems to be a greater conversation and a structured conversation that's coming up in the months to come so that we can have a better handle on this. And as I think I mentioned, and we talked about at the last meeting, maybe we can actually identify what goalpost we're going for instead of just saying, okay, sleep there. Hopefully ORA can give you some services. I mean, everything now is piecemeal and it's Band-Aids, and we're trying to cobble together something, and parts of it are working, but do I see an end? No. Do I think that collectively we're starting to struggle with a recognition that we need to define that end? Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Ty. And I have to say I appreciate your insight and your comments about the importance of proper management of the site and who should be doing it to be to have the greatest likelihood of success. I wonder if you can share any insight you have from other cities where there are urban campgrounds or night lawn kinds of things being managed by other organizations. I know that's what happens in Medford, and maybe there's other cities that you're familiar with as well.
The two examples that I can immediately give, and I'll quote my own experience that I had alongside some of you in touring Rogue Retreat. Rogue Retreat has seemingly an excellent organization and operation, and they seem to have all of their sites very dialed in Medford. That's a professional social service organization that the city leans on and can point people toward. I think that's an example of something that's working. Not to throw former Deputy Police Chief Warren Hensman, who's now of the Grants Pass Police Department, his community under the bus, but I'm told that the situation in Grants Pass is not working. They have 2 or 3 lawns. You have to move every 72 hours. There's no management. It, again, is left to the police officers, I'm told, to be out there taking attendance every day to see, all right, John Smith is here again today. That is another 24 hours on his clock. And that, by all accounts, is not working, and I think is a much bigger operation than what we have. It's multiple locations. My guess is that it's a lot more participants over and above the 20 to 25, high 20s tents that we have out here. So those are 2 good neighboring examples, one that appears to be working pretty smoothly and one that appears to be less than ideal.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Ty. That is very helpful. And I'm curious. It's my understanding that both of those are 24-hour. So apropos of this conversation, both of those are 24-hour services that Rogue Retreat offers, and that at its urban campground, and then the one in Grants Pass. There's no social service agency involved, as you said. But is that time limited as well, other than the 72-hour movement? Can people be on the lawn during the day?
My understanding is in Grants Pass, you can be on for 24 hours straight. And then you have to move to another venue, another location, and then that 72 hours starts again. One of the parts of the conversation that Deputy Chief Lorfink here from the Ashland Police Department, who came from the frontline leadership of Grants Pass PD, one of the lessons he brings with him is he sees a need for a regular reset. He sees a need for, I'm not trying to sound disrespectful to anybody. We're talking about fellow human beings and community members, but don't allow the situation to remain in place unnecessarily. Force that reset every day. It prohibits sprawl. It prohibits people from being too congested in a tight space for too long. We recently had some problems on the lawn out here that arguably are because before people were setting their tent up, taking it down, or sleeping. And with greater occupancy allowed, we've got people in close proximity to each other that are just kind of left idle. And I think that kind of lends itself to it. So I think I know Deputy Chief Lorfink would advocate for that need to reset on a regular basis and keep some control of the situation, which is a big part of what we're asking for in this.
Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Mayor. Ty, I don't know if this is a question for you, but maybe for City Manager. Could you get us up to speed on where we're at with our budget into, is ORA still helping us out on the night lawn, and where are we at fiscally in that cycle, and any insights and snapshot into how things might change?
So I don't have the numbers in front of me of how much funding we have left for homeless services. ORA is still helping us with storage. So that has been a great partnership there, but they are not actively managing the lawn. So they are utilizing their staff and volunteers to help with the storage. And so people can store items in the shed during the day and then retrieve them in the evening. ORA did have significant funding that they utilized to allow us to have a winter shelter this winter. And so that has allowed our funding to stretch further than it normally would. So, I'll have to get exact numbers, but I think, moving forward, if we're going to have managed spaces, we're going to need more funding.
Right. I like the reports that are coming back with some modest numbers of guests moving into transitional housing, other housing, access to services. And I'm curious if this council wants to think about like an RFP or something for management, just to wrap our heads around what somebody like Rogue Retreat and Aura might ask for that kind of service. Because I'm I'm just really curious what kind of funding we could find if we knew what that number was.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, I would just say that we're on the 18th, we're going to start this process of having these conversations. And so I think that that's a great place for that to come up. As what are we trying to solve? What does this look like? And that's kind of, I think, my understanding based on our session that we had, that that's the space to have that conversation.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I wonder if now isn't the appropriate time to give direction to staff to start, down this path. And, of course, that's, inked in. We've got that meeting. That's a great opportunity. But I don't, we can change the hours. We can, we can rearrange things. But I don't know beyond that what we're doing to help the situation at this meeting. And I'm just wondering, like, what we can do, and if directing staff to get an RFP is something that we want to put into a motion, or something additionally while we have this opportunity.
So, Sabrina?
I think just given the timeline, because May 18th is not that far away, and an RFP takes some time to be issued and then out and then respond. I think what may be a better use of that time is speaking with Rogue Retreat and Aura and getting some information from them of, would you manage the lawn? Because the answer may be no. Because, the facilities that they're managing are more infrastructure heavy. They have more ability to do things than our lawn, right? And so I think the question is, would someone even come in and manage this area, first of all, because the answer may be no. And then if that's the case, what operationally does that look like, and what dollar amount would that take? And I think that, again, depends on if you're looking at a 24/7 operation versus someone who's managing in part, like through the night, but the daytime is not occupied. So I think those are two questions there as well.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate that. And all certainly good ideas. I do think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that the 18th is going to be the time where we actually discuss that. I'm actually interested, as we talked about last time, of hearing from Legal First, which is on the agenda there, which will lend us to have a most informed decision and how to move forward going forward. But kind of bringing it back to this, and it does land with management, and management takes funding. And that is something where we're going to have that discussion. Is going to be, well, what is the trade-off that we need to do? So that is a discussion I don't think we would want to dive in tonight, but I do want to bring it back to this agenda item in particular, which is, did we perhaps over-rotate trying to solve a certain problem, and can we bring that back to something? And as I look through staff recommendations, and you talk about, again, the delicate balance, and so maybe, Chief, if you could speak to how you and Sabrina probably as well, how you would balance what seem to be two antonyms but really aren't, which are flexibility and consistency. So, because that's something that I think when we try to have a one-size-fits-all up here, best laid plans. And I heard from some of the advocates that didn't work even though we were trying. So can you kind of dive in a little bit to how we could get that consistency and what you need from us, from council, relative to consistency as well, because that's very important too.
As well-intentioned as the direction was, I do think that it was an over-rotation. I think that there are tools that the police department had and has in place that we have been using since this flash of negative behavior in Garfield Park, and we have been using successfully. And I will give one example, that there's one person in particular that had been a negative presence in Garfield Park, and he was expelled and appealed it, and 2 weeks later the judge upheld it. And so that remedy takes time. There's some other things that I noted in the council communication about some changes in patrol tactics that we're using. And overall, we have seen a decrease in negative behavior in Garfield Park. And it could be because they're just all substantially over here. I don't know. All of us are kind of stumbling in the dark on this and making the best decisions we can, as council did a couple of weeks ago. I agree that consistency has to be there. We are working on better communication plans to allow people on the lawn to know visually whether they have permission to stay for the night, or it's some signage or something, so that they don't have to wait for somebody to come out there and talk to them. I think if we can get back to consistency, if we can continue to use the enforcement tools that we have in place already, the more observant patrol and enforcement tactics to then lead to those enforcement rules, I think that that is a better approach to long-term trying to address this situation between this lawn and the Garfield Park situation. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and have the people who've come to speak to us tonight on this issue offer their testimony. We'll start with Debbie Neiswander, then Eric Novickis, and Kate Hartzell. Each of you will have 3 minutes at the podium.
Hello, Debbie Neiswander, Ashland resident. So I see the time thing as a quality of life kind of thing. So in the previous meeting, I asked for a 10 o'clock a.m. departure time, and we have a lot of disabled people on the lawn. A lot of folks with medical issues, mental health issues, and the sorts. And it takes some time to get off the lawn. And so 10 o'clock is really an efficient time. I think if we could consistently adhere to that, we would see a big difference in behavior. You know, sometimes I'm disabled. You can't see that. You can't feel my pain. You can't see my pain, okay? I couldn't survive out on the lawn. I can't get on the ground. I can't get up. I've only got one hand that I can actively use. So the lawn takes away independence from a lot of these folks. So I'm going to look for more volunteers to try to help these folks get off the lawn in the morning. And then the evening time. So I didn't like the 3 o'clock thing. I would prefer 4:30. It's consistent with our winter hours. So that's consistency, and these folks love consistency. The 3 o'clock, there's a lot of school traffic, and these folks have to cross the street, and they have all those belongings. And so for me, it's a safety issue. So I would prefer to see the 4:30 to the 10 a.m. With the thought that we can do better in helping some of these folks get off the lawn, because they do struggle. And, you know, it comes out in behavioral issues. So anyway, that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, whoops. So yeah, I'm Eric Novickis. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. You know, I agree with much of what the police chief has said. I believe that the council needs to really move away from utilizing the police department to oversee the situation. What we've seen is heavy enforcement there. The last police report that we saw, 68 prohibited camping charges at the night lawn. This is supposed to be a place that's helping people who are in really desperate situations, not a place where we entrap people and give them citations. We saw 12 trespass misdemeanor charges. The police are not social workers, as the police chief said. Their training and skill set is much different. And there's no reason we should be aggressively ticketing people in this way. Mostly people aren't leaving soon enough, and that's why they're getting ticketed, has been brought up. I really like Derek Sherrill's proposal to put a cover and decking out there because it does allow people's gear to stay dry so that they can get out of there easily when it's wet. It's really difficult packing up a wet tent. You know, I know from doing the growers market how difficult it is coming down, clearing out when the rain's dumping on us. You know, it makes it very difficult. I think there's also opportunities for an incentive-based program rather than enforcement where we're giving people tickets. Instead, we're creating incentives for them to ensure that the entire group is out of there by a certain time. I think we definitely need a nonprofit, professional social service organization operating the site. There are a lot of liabilities here. And really, it's reaching a level of negligence in operating this without oversight. The city could find itself in a pretty serious lawsuit. There's been a number of things that have already happened there. What we need to really talk about, though, are revenue streams. And what Mamdani is doing in New York City is looking to build housing, but it's a similar situation. And he's putting a large tax on second homes. And I think there's an opportunity for this here. We can tax the people who have surplus housing and put that into funding people who are unhoused. And lastly, I have to get back to the police budget. I mean, it was probably 10 years ago now, or I don't know, 10 years ago, but 5 new police officers were hired, or this police chief came forward and demanded 5 additional officers. Eventually, he got them over the years. Basically, every biennium, this is about $1 million that we're spending. And you know, we could supplant this money and put it into services rather than enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Hartzell, followed by Christopher Nader.
I appreciate the complexities and the way in which the chief has presented to you some of the challenges. I want to endorse Debbie's feedback as well about the hours. She's way more in touch with the complexities that are happening, even just crossing the street and all those details. I want to just remind all of us that if I drive my car into the parking lot outside this building and choose to sit there and reorganize my glove box, I'm probably not going to get ticketed by the police. It's a public parking lot. And so some of the complexities we talk about are if somebody gets off the night lawn and they've got to reorganize the bag that they're going to carry around on their back for the rest of the day. How are we treating unhoused and housed people similarly or differently? Same with Garfield Park. If I have a child's birthday party over there for 3 hours, I'm not ticketed by the police, but I know that they also move to ticket someone who's there more than 2 hours. So just to keep those differences in mind, you asked about strategies. ORA has navigators and has social service agencies send representatives to their site at a fair and consistent frequency. There's no reason that we can't approach some of those same organizations. I work for ODHS. I'm not here on their behalf tonight. I'm speaking as an individual. But they could easily send their outreach person there and maybe on every other week basis than sending them to ORA, because my understanding is they're not real busy at ORA anyway. So there are ways to bring services to the street. And when you have people here a little bit longer in the morning, you can have some of those service providers, whether they're mental health providers or other types of services that can be offered when people are here. And I do think some will take advantage of it. Changes in police enforcement. I was with Debbie last night driving around, and there was some shock expressed by people because there has been a laxness, partly because of the winter and the rain, and all of a sudden the message went out to the police officers, no, tighten it up. I would ask you to make sure that that same message is communicated to the people who've been living with a little bit more lax enforcement to know that, oh, on Monday, we're going to tighten down. I think that's really important, as is the communication about the severe weather shelter and the fact that we didn't have it last week. Communication, as the chief said, is very important. Another thing to keep in mind is that people aren't going to want to be here in the summer with the sun shining down on their tent or down on them. So part of what we've been dealing with all winter is the difference between people wanting to be in a tent so they don't have to take it to the laundromat and dry it out versus knowing that they're not going to want to stay there all day because it's just too darn hot. And there are changes coming. especially around disabilities. I'll invite you to just kind of watch for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Nader?
Mayor, I've never said your name, so I'll try to remember yours. My last name is a French last name. It's E-A-U. Anytime you see E-O-U, it's either French,
Thank you.
Canada, French, New Orleans. Anyhow, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I feel like I'm on a parallel planet. I don't know, maybe you guys haven't read the news. We have 7-8 million baby boomers all retiring. We used to have 5 to 1 workers, all right? We have, listen, we have a crisis of perception. I came here to support the police chief because the lawn shouldn't be there for a lot of reasons. The most important reason is what's behind that lawn, and we shouldn't have to talk about it. It should not be here for that reason alone. But we should invite, I always try to educate everywhere I go to my elected officials and go out for coffee. I'm glad a lot of you guys came out to the nightclubs. Thank you very much. It's wonderful. Everybody was so happy to see so many of you, and at the coffee shops. But listen, 6 units of housing really in the community, and the average person's through 95% of human history, the average person lived to the age of 35. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies in 1999. The marginal tax rate's going to go from whatever it is now, 20 some odd, with 70%, just federal taxes. If we can't figure a way to jumpstart this economy, we need jobs. That's what the wall is about, jobs, cheap jobs. We need good jobs. But we've got to develop housing. Just let's get to it. It's not rocket science. I'm sorry you live all the way across the other side of town, Mayor, but let's find a place where we could sprinkle it in. We do it in New York. There's hundreds of models of housing. You can get a report from someone who studies potatoes in the Center in Department of Defense. Like, you'll find there's housing experts who can give you 50 different models, 80, 20 models, whatever, and we can get federal money to do. We can get some rich people in this area that care about Ashland and care about this community that will make up the 20% difference. Let's get busy. Let's get to work. I hear some of these councilmen, and I know some of these people personally, just very tangentially, okay? You guys are talking about, I heard complaints about basic math. Like, how hard is it to do half of this stuff? Let's get you on payroll. We need something to complain about. If not, give it up. You guys are acting like really, really, really bad Republicans. Let's spend some local money. They're going to cut federal money. It's going to be like whack-a-mole. We got to figure out where we can find savings and cut waste and provide opportunities for better outcomes for less money. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Additional questions of staff? Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Sabrina, if you don't mind, could you hop in here and just talk about what we're trying to accomplish through your lens and how we can best affect this policy? And I see it kind of on a temporary basis as we're trying to navigate through to the 18th and beyond and look at, again, more novel ideas that we've heard and so forth. But we need to have that stopgap. So can you talk about what you think, again, maybe the same question to you that I had to the chief, which is flexibility versus consistency, and how we can put that in a real-time position for staff to be able to manage this as best as possible while we work towards better solutions?
Yeah, I think what we're looking for is the ability to kind of address some of the concerns we've heard from our partners about the new hours, recognizing that there could be significant changes coming as council moves through this discussion. I think a priority for me, quite frankly, is the rat population. That was a huge, expensive undertaking to get that under control. And it affects not only city staff and the public that use our facilities, but also the people who are residing on the lawn. And so I don't want to move backwards to that again. So I think really what I would like to see is kind of using staff's recommendation in the interim while we come up with, kind of how we're going to move forward overall, whether or not we remain here or not.
And just from your perspective, that staff recommendation was after collaboration with our service provider partners?
Yeah, I think, part of the hours is working with Aura, who is helping, providing some of the service here to ensure that they can continue doing that, because that is an asset to the people who are using the facility. And so I want to make sure that we're thoughtful with any changes, that we're considering the people who are working with us to provide this service.
Councillor Hanson.
Thank you. Sabrina, I'm wondering, May 18th isn't too far away, but it's almost a month away. I know that these conversations can be had without an RFP. I would love to start those conversations early, so we have something more to report on the 18th. Is that already happening, or do you need staff direction to do that work?
I'm happy to take staff direction, but we're already having conversations with service providers about how we navigate this moving forward. That started prior to council's discussion.
Great.
I think staff recognizes that this is not a long-term sustainable option for us. And I think, we would like to present council with some options, because really council is going to need to decide what is it that the city does versus what the city does not do, and how much resource we're going to put towards that.
Right, and we had some interesting testimony here that drew a correlation between the money that we spend in our police budget that could potentially alleviate police staff time towards managing the night lawn. So as part of these bigger picture discussions, I would be interested. I'm sure that the council would be interested in all the information, but particularly what would it look like from a budgetary standpoint if we could make relief from police efforts and put it into social service efforts to find some money to do this in the interim.
Yeah, so finding money would mean reducing service in another area. So, for example, if we're looking at the police budget, right now we have 4 officers on patrol for the whole city. And so reducing their budget reduces potentially public safety for the whole community. And so while we need to have that conversation, I think keeping the scale in mind of what the service level is that's being provided, because there's no additional beans, as I like to say, to cover increased staffing at this point, services, et cetera. So we're going to need to balance it by reducing in another area.
Well, perhaps there's another way to look at it. Perhaps we can get a document from the chief, how many hours the uniformed officers have logged out on the lawn, and how much money we spend on those officers, and then therefore look for that as our budget and decrease that with a social service spend that's considerably less, I would imagine, than a licensed or a fully armed police officer. So it seems like that would be a great thing to look at. I would love to see those numbers, and maybe we don't need to reduce services so much as we can just do a trade, because I'm sure there's ways for us to document this and slice it up.
So, Councillor, what we would be looking for is if there is direction from the full council to have that analysis done. We can take up that question after we complete the conversation tonight. We'll circle back around to it tonight.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was just curious if I was going to prepare myself for an amendment, or if it didn't come through in a motion, or if that wasn't necessary. So I appreciate
I think
that.
it's a secondary conversation to the timing conversation tonight. Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Ty, so we're talking about start time. You've asked for people getting off the lawn by 8 o'clock. We've heard some testimony suggesting that that's difficult, that 10 o'clock, difficult for some people that have some, mobility issues, and that 10 o'clock is more feasible. Last week, when we came up with these hours, we heard testimony from the deputy that people won't adhere to the 10 o'clock. That 10 o'clock means that 8 means 10, 10 means 12. to that sort of effect. We've now had experience for a week and about a week and a day. What's been the experience these mornings with people getting off the lawn? Are you finding that people are not getting off the lawn by 10 o'clock?
Well, the last several days has not been a very good check on that because of the weekend and it's been raining. I agree with what the deputy chief said, that previously the vacate time was 7:30 in the morning. And part of this is that the police officers don't want to be in this position. The police officers don't want to be out there at 7:35 shaking a tent saying you got to go, and if you don't go, or else. So the police officers let it slide, and until they feel like they have to do something, like, okay, this is out of control, I have to do something, that's when they do something. An awful lot of stuff in Ashland is complaint driven. It's not police officers out there beating the bushes trying to find people. So 7:30 historically has been the vacate time. I usually get to work between 8:30 and 9, and it is atypical for me to arrive and not see people still either pulling their stuff off of the lawn or occupying significant space while they reorganize their stuff in the parking lot. So it is with experience that we say, whatever the official vacate time is, we have 2.5, I think this started in June of 2023. We have 2.5 years of experience of, if we say that you have to vacate at this hour, then you can plus 1 or 1.5 to that before realistically everybody's gone. And so the part that really kind of alarmed me was the notion, and again, I respect the intention behind it, and the suggested motion respects the intention behind your intention from a couple of weeks ago. The idea of 3 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and then looking at what that is going to be realistically, it makes it very much approach 24 hours a day. 8 a.m. gives them another hour in the morning. Again, it's not like anybody wants to be out there at 8:05 shaking a tent and saying, get going, I got my ticket book ready to go. There's grace and allowances built into all of this. And all we ask for is some measure of reasonableness, that you're not forcing the officers to be reactive to the situation because you're taking so long. So 8 o'clock doesn't really mean 8 o'clock. 7:30 doesn't really mean 7:30. It means realistically an hour after that, that's when we're going to start looking at you askew.
So I have a follow-up question to that. And over these last 2.5 years, we've heard a lot of talk about consistency, about, is this the morning when they're going to let me stay a little bit later? and it, having sort of a difference depending on, who might be making that decision at any given day. And I know that that's changed, and we've kind of locked it in and made some adjustments to that. But I wonder if, and I think one of the counselors brought it up last time, if we left it at 10, but 10 really meant 10, does that help at all?
No, respectfully, Mayor, no, it doesn't, because none of this really means what the declaration is. 7:30 doesn't mean 7:30. 10's not going to mean 10. And I apologize. I'm not trying to be interrupting, but if that is the direction that council gives, that we're going to say 10, but 10 really means 10, then when the police officers are out there enforcing 10 really means 10, you are going to have a lot of people that are ticked off at the police officers who otherwise show a lot of grace and generosity, and that is going to even more unfairly dump onto us, because we're going to have to be very, very rigid about that. If we say 8 o'clock, then we're in recognition that it's really going to be 9 or 9:30, and we don't want to touch it if we don't have to. It is really going to create some tension if the city's position is 10, or else the Ashland cops are coming out there to take action, and that's not going to work for anybody.
Sabrina.
So I think the difficulty when we're thinking about this is we kind of, I always think about it from, my point of view is, if I have an appointment at 9, I'm there at 9, right? I'm kind of self-policing and I'm getting myself where I need to go, but that's not what's happening on the lawn. And we have 1 or 2 officers coming out to try and to enforce the rules that we've implemented to keep things and have the reset in order. But if we have 25 occupants and 2 officers, there's no way to enforce 8 is 8 or 10 is 10. It's kind of a delicate balance and dance through that. And so, I think, when we're talking about subject matter experts, the police have actively managed this lawn for 2 years. They are an expert on how we've made this kind of not ideal situation work to be able to have a camping ordinance. And so, I think it's really, we need to have this bigger discussion, but we also need to understand that there are externalities to changing the time and the way that we did. And so, we respectfully ask that you recognize the expertise that the police are offering and how we manage this and working with the advocates and our partners.
There's not a question in my mind about that expertise. My question is really about, is there culture on the lawn that that is leading to more negative interactions because of that fluctuating time of when do we start really saying, no, really you have to go, it's now been an hour and a half. Like, is there benefit in a harder line? And that was the question, and I think Chief answered it well. But I think that's a question that comes up about all of this, especially if it's later in the morning when people would have had a chance kind of just naturally to get up and get moving in a little bit different way than if they're being asked to leave at 8. Questions, Councilor Sherrill?
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, just looking at some suggested motions here, just the language, I just wanted a little bit of clarification. It talks about the lawn operating hours are at the discretion of the city manager and to be initially set at such hours. And I'm just kind of curious as to like the ambiguity in having exact set hours and also having the language that gives the discretion to change it, and maybe there's a good explanation.
So we've delegated to police, depending on weather, to make a call. So it's not, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, thanks. I came up with that language, Counselor. And the reason I put it that way is because and I thank you for bringing this up because this is an important part of the conversation. So much of this is in the dark, it's unknown. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what obstacle is going to be around the corner, what monkey wrench is going to get thrown in a week for a month from now. The situation that we have right here in this moment is we are all trying to maintain this balance between the rules on the lawn and negative behavior issues that have been happening at Garfield Park. Council, with every good intention, at a previous meeting, dictated new hours. This conversation is a reaction to that. And the reason that this was worded the way that it is because I hope everybody agrees that this is a level of operational detail that if we have to come back to council every time we want to change a rule on the lawn, that's not going to be workable. And so the city manager's office has always had the discretion to set up those rules. This suggested motion declares the council's intention that what we're trying to do in this moment, in this conversation that's been going on for the last week or two, is we are trying to mitigate the negative interactions between unhoused community members and people that live around Garfield Park. That is what this immediate conversation is about. And I get that it always triggers other parts of the conversation, and this is what we're immediately trying to wrestle with. And this declares the council's intention. To borrow your own language, this declares the council's overarching policy on this. This is what we're going for, and it empowers the city manager to make those decisions in the moment as necessary, so we don't have a body of 7 now managing the night lawn and every rule out there. That's the intention of this wording.
Okay.
Any last questions
you.
of staff?
Yep.
Okay, floor is open for a motion. Counselor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council issue staff direction that lawn operating hours are at the discretion of the city manager while keeping in mind an intent to minimize negative interactions between occupants of the lawn and surrounding neighborhoods. Operating hours to be initially set at 4:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. plus 24-hour occupancy on weekends and federal holidays.
Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate this. This was a long conversation. It's not even close to being done, but I appreciate the fulsome discussion that we're having here. This is one of the hardest things that we continue to try to navigate through. And some of the concerns that I have with this is I do recognize the over-rotation. I do recognize that it feels like in some ways we might be going backwards. But one of the things that concerns me the most, and we brought it up as Councilor Kaplan and said about 10 being 12:30, is I worry that to a larger degree that when we set policy and we hard code it for that, and then we bend from it, that's a slippery slope relative to legislation versus execution and how we do that. So I firmly believe that this is one of the very, very, very few exceptions that we need to have relative to hard-coded policy, and that is baked into this motion. And while I know that the 18th is a ways away, it's not. I worry respectfully, absolutely would like to have the discussion, and we need to start it on the 18th. I'm very interested in staff direction at that time. I'm hesitant respectfully to attach any amendment at this time just because we're working on the fly. I think it's going to be very important to hear from legal. I know staff is working on ideas. That is going to be the discussion that we need to and we will have on the 18th. But I think this allows us to see what happens, and I would hope that the city manager in the interim may be able to, without having the chief to come in here and speak to it, I think that might be something that you might be able to add into just a weekly on your city manager's report, just so that there's a little bit of accountability there that you can speak. And if we, as we always do, tend to run out of time before it's your turn, that at least it's recorded somewhere in that people can see that in the agenda. That would be my hope, that something like that, or in the packet. But I think we're trying to navigate this as gracefully as possible. More to follow with this, of course, but I think that this is, I appreciate staff's feedback on this, and we should take them at their word. They're the ones out there, along with.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, I support this. I mean, I think it highlights the need for this conversation on the 18th, right? And the broader conversation of what we're doing, right? Is the fact that, oh, let's do this. Oh, that's not working. Let's do this. We can't continue down that path. And that's why I'd also be hesitant about any amendments or additional motions right now, because, okay, we can have a conversation with an Aura Rogue Retreat about managing. Great, love that. But also, is the lawn going to be there? Is it going to be somewhere else? Are there other facilities that might be included in that? Like, it's hard to have those conversations with an organization when we as a body haven't even decided what that could potentially look like. So, yeah, I support this. Again, this is all kind of temporary right now, and so I really look forward to the 18th so that we can really begin that long-term conversation and hopefully find resolution.
Further discussion? Councilor Sherrill?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have just a little bit of concern, talking to 13 individuals in the last week, and 11 of the 13 seem to greatly appreciate the longer hours. I'm going to do my best to get behind this. With speaking into the public record that I realize that our law enforcement are the subject matter experts, and I do trust you, Chief. And when I'm driving by at 9 or 9:30 in the morning, I hope to see people getting off the lawn, and I believe that you and your staff will continue to show grace and patience with people. The only thing that's really hanging me up at all is that we have almost 3 years of data of how we've always done it, and everybody's doing their best, and it's not perfect. It's a really hard problem to solve. And I felt like maybe we did over-rotate a little bit, but we didn't give it time to gather any data and get more feedback from the people before we just knee-jerk reaction the other way. And I say that with kindness, and I do want to support this. I just, that's what concerns me, is like we didn't give another try a chance, and this is definitely a hard one. So I just wanted to have that on the record. Thanks.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I appreciate the care that this community has into this. I don't know. I'm going to go with subject matter expert on this one. And I really feel like this council has a big lift. And we know we've been working on this for 2.5 years, and here we are. We still don't have somebody managing the night lawn. So I trust that city manager and staff are looking into these things that we have been discussed this past couple weeks. Definitely feel like the 18th won't come fast enough. I would love to have some of this research done in advance, and I trust it will. I really do. And if I show up on the 18th, if we show up on the 18th and we're not prepared for it, it's going to be really sad for us, because this is something that we needed to have, figured out 2.5 years ago. But that it's all so new. So care, compassion, and right people doing the right jobs, and better consistent policy. I appreciate that we're doing this work now. It did seem like an overcorrection, and I hear the neighbors, and I hear our unhoused community, and patience and grace from everybody. Please, we're working hard on this. That's all I got to say. I will support this. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Ty. I have to say I'm in alignment with Councillor Sherrill. I feel that, I feel that, this is a term of, I think there was a reaction by this council to what was presented to us by both advocates, unhoused people, and people from the neighborhood. And, there was several attempts at it, so I can't, say that it was really, scientific in what was we ended up landing on, having, off the lawn allowed back on the lawn at 3 o'clock, off the lawn by 10. But I guess for me, what resonated most was giving people a little bit more time to get off the lawn in the morning, because my personal experience packing up, a tent at 7:30 in the morning when it's just barely light. Now, fortunately, time is on our side, so it's lighter. It's light at 6 now, so there's a little bit more time for people to kind of get their heads around that. It just seemed kinder to me to give a later hour. And I have to say, I was really surprised to see the strength of the reaction one day, or I guess it was 38 minutes or something, that it wasn't the right thing. Didn't really seem like we gave it enough time. And that's why I asked the question I did about what has been the experience. And I appreciate that, there hasn't been a lot of days because there was some rain. So people were allowed to stay on the lawn. And I appreciate that practice that the police, followed over the last couple of years. That was an innovation, and I think that was appropriate. So I would rather have a later start off the lawn in the morning, but I'll probably join in the consensus on this one.
So it strikes me that when the night lawn was first started, it was an operational decision to address a very specific need. And we didn't have a conversation really at the council about what was this. It was a stopgap, right? And now here we are a couple of years later, and it's one of those things that has just incrementally gotten to where it is. And I think in that, I would agree that there's been an over-rotation just in not timing set aside, but in realizing that there wasn't a policy here. And so in setting the times, in my mind, that's been a bit of an over-rotation from the council, right? Because that's an operational decision. But in the absence of an actual policy about what this thing is and what it's trying to be and what we're trying to make of it, there's no direction to staff for them to manage to that policy. And I think what we're dealing with here is a combination of a lot of things happening at once that have come about from thoughtful, good decisions being made as we go along, and then we kind of end up in a place that we didn't really anticipate being. And so all of that is to say that I don't think that anyone has done anything wrong in terms of how we manage this night lawn. I think our partners have done a great job coming forward to help us. Every community is dealing with this in different ways. And our community is trying to do this in as compassionate a way as we can. And we heard it today that if we had a blank check, we could fix those problems. We could have it be managed 24/7. Those blank checks are not there. The funding is going to dry up to some extent in the near future from the federal changes that have been made and the stress on the state government. So we need to be figuring out, how do we make something, this lawn sleeping space, how do we make it work inside the boundaries of saying we aren't going to be able to pay a social services contract to have somebody manage this 24/7 with these number of people, with what it takes to actually manage a shelter situation. And so I'm hoping that we can get to a place where we figure out what is a hybrid, what is the appropriate amount of service provision that we can do to move us forward in our goals, to make this a place, this sleeping space, a place where people can use it to help get on their feet, but without taking on the full responsibility of another shelter, given our current financial realities. And so all of that is coming, I think, in the bigger conversation. But I'm glad to see, or I will be glad to see, if the council puts the timing decision back into the operational space where I believe it belongs. We'll catch the policy piece up to it. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please, Jordan.
Hanson.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Chief.
Have a good night.
We are to the Citizens Budget Committee appointment process.
Okay, so I have some ballots here. So tonight you're going to be appointing 3 members to the Citizens Budget Committee. And we are going to approve one for a term that ends in 2028 and 2 for the term that will end in 2029. And so as we've done before, we're going to hand out the ballots. You're going to pick your top 3 from the candidates that were in your packet. We will tally those, and if we have 3 clear appointees, we will do that. And if we don't, we will do rounds until we get clear and remove people as they're appointed from the option. As a reminder, per state law, your vote is public, so when you turn in your ballot, I will mention your name as well as who you voted for each round, since that is required. Any questions?
Are we doing 3 at a time?
Yeah, you're gonna pick your top 3. And last time we nailed it, so no pressure, okay? We forgot the Jeopardy music, so we're just gonna have to. Is it if you ask for it? Everyone have a pen?
How do we know which number corresponds to the year?
So the number 1 will get the longest term, and the other 2 will get.
Okay.
It's habit.
Yeah, exactly.
So while these are being tallied, we can move on to the city manager's report, or are you tallying? Oh, after you read them out loud.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. Counselor Hanson, you mind if I start reading? Okay. Counselor Kaplan, number 1, Carol Cohen, number 2, Noah Wertheiser, and number 3, Mike Gardner. Mayor Graham, number 1, Mike Gardner, number 2, Carol Cohen, number 3, Craig Britton. Counselor Bloom, number 1, Britton, number 2, Cohen, number 3, Wertheiser. Counselor Dale, number 1, Britton, number 2, Larson, number 3, Cohen. Sherrill, number 1, Wertheiser. Messing with me? What's that? Okay. Number 2, Werner, number 3, Gardner. And Counselor Hanson, number 1, Gardner, number 2, Cohen, number 3, Larson. What you guys? Okay, I can't. I'm blind. Okay, so
Per Alyssa's instruction, the lower the point, the
Okay.
higher the ranking.
So we have, yeah, I know. Cohen is appointed. Gardner. And Britton. So why don't you double check those? I'll move on to the next item. We always want to check our math. Or we'll all stare at you while you do it.
If you stand there, let me know.
Okay. Maybe I should have done this first.
We each have 2 columns.
Makes sense to me.
B and C should be 2028, but yeah. Okay.
2020. Okay. Awesome. That's good. No, it's the opposite. Are there 2 that are going to end in 2021?
Oh, there's 2 for,
2
and 1 for
2029,
28.
1 28.
We can either go in alphabetical order, or you guys can vote who you want for the 28th. So 2 are appointed to 2029. One's appointed for 2028. So the top 2.
I think that makes the most sense.
2029 and then 2028 for position C. Okay. Excellent. Nailed it. Good job, everybody.
So as we head into the motion-making element, I just wanted to say to thank you to everyone who has applied to serve on the Citizens Budget Committee. It's a really important part of our civic process, and I appreciate that so many people are willing to put in the time to be able to do that. Anyone who is not selected this evening for a position on the Citizens Budget Committee, I would encourage you, if you have not if you are not already a member of an advisory committee, to look at our offerings online and see where else you might have interest, because we certainly appreciate your service and your willingness to help. All right. Go ahead.
Did we need an actual motion to name? Okay.
We need and we need some language. Yes, exactly. And we need the language for that.
So it's going to be like, I move to appoint Cohen
appoint?
to the term ending in June 30th, 2029.
I got it.
Gardner.
The language is appoint?
Sorry?
Appoint?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Kaplan?
I move to appoint Carol Cohen to the term ending June 30th, 2029. Mike Gardner to the term ending June 30th, 2020, to a second position ending June 30th, 2029, and Eric Britton to a term ending June 30th, 2028.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councillor Kaplan?
Thanks to everyone for applying. I talked with each one of the candidates and appreciated getting to meet everybody. There were some hard choices involved. We have a really high quality cadre of people who wanted to step forward and help us with our Citizens Budget Committee this next couple of years. So thanks to everyone.
Councillor Bloom?
Congratulations.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Jordan?
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And I appreciate that staff has made this process simpler with the spreadsheet. It has, in the past, there have been multiple rounds and various different things that have taken more time. So that brings us to our city manager report and look ahead.
Yep, so we've had some updates to look ahead since the packet was published. So one thing of note is at our next council meeting on May 5th, we will have the 2200 ad hoc recommendations coming forward. We also will have a special presentation from Jackson County SART. So those two things will be on the agenda. And so I just wanted to update you with that. And that's all I have for tonight.
All right. Anything else on the city manager's report? Nope. Okay. So we are now to our last order of business, other business from council members and reports from council liaisons. Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, I have a kind of a partial report, I suppose. This is from the Climate and Environmental Policy Advisory Committee. We heard in the last meeting that after some months after this council approved a special program for replacing package terminal air conditioners with high efficiency package terminal heat pumps in residential apartment buildings that take those things. That we have the first 6 that were installed last week. And I understand that the next batch are going to go into the same place. So appreciate the Ashlander for stepping up and taking those units, installing those units, and moving on it. Hope that other apartment complexes will follow their lead because it's a significant savings for the tenants of those buildings, less so in the summer, or almost nothing in the summer, but certainly in the winter when they're replacing heat pumps, replacing resistance heat with heat pumps. So that's a way to reduce utility bills for our tenants who are in those buildings, permanently. So thanks very much to the staff and to the Ashlander for stepping up and starting that process.
Are there any other reports? Councilor Hanson.
I regret I've missed the last two TAC meetings, but the TAC has been working diligently on their agendas, and I will make the next one and report back. I thank the TAC very much. Going from the agenda, it looks like we talked about the C-Click Fix, TSP update, some mini roundabouts, and some unfinished business on the intersection at Oak Street and A Street in Van Ness.
A quick report from me that in my service on the Jackson County Public Safety Coordinating Council, we've been hearing a lot of presentations about some very innovative programs that are happening in Jackson County. Some of them are happening at the jail. Some of them are happening in social services organizations that are linked in with law enforcement at the sheriff's office. And so we'll be looking to have some of those presentations brought to council so that we can all understand some of the systemic changes that are happening at the county level. So those will be coming to us in the future. All right, if there are no additional updates, the floor is open for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.